a bad move. This is a true accounting of events that occurred between November 2012 and January 2013. This is not a contrived or exaggerated recounting. I want to preface that I am a recovering addict and had been clean for 2 years and 3 months when the occurrences began. Because I choose to maintain my anonymity as a recovering addict, in keeping with the traditions and principles of my program, I do not use my real name, nor do I use the actual names of anyone included in this recanting. I am a college graduate and a career professional, but I will not disclose specifics in these areas either. I will use actual geographical locations, but will not disclose the address of the location where this story takes place. I am a very spiritual person, and it is my faith that saved my life. My faith and my mom, my recovery family. I was 43 years old when the events occurred. In November 2012, after a painful breakup with my partner of 10 years, I, along with my 7-year-old black Labrador retriever, Sora, moved out of the 2,500 square foot house that I owned with my former partner because we had put it on the market and into one side of a duplex that was just east of downtown Orlando. The ranch-style red brick, 2-bedroom unit was perfect. I recall feeling a sense of accomplishment in finding a place so close to downtown, especially because the rental rate was surprisingly low considering the location and the space. I was less than a mile from the heart of downtown on the outskirts of the highly desirable Eola Heights. Less than half a block away, there was a beautiful city park that was maintained by the Orlando Horticulture Society. Perfect for my morning and evening walks with Sora. Plus, the duplex had a fenced backyard that was perfect for those times when it was easier to just open the back door and let my precious pup out to do her business. The duplex was built in the late 1940s. The place had never been renovated and still had the original terrazzo floors, bathroom tiles, wood-stained kitchen cabinets, etc. But it had been very well maintained, and while outdated, it had a classic charm about it. The day that I signed the lease, Mike, the guy from the property management company, informed me that they would not be leasing out the other side of the duplex anytime soon. He didn't offer an explanation, and frankly, I was so thrilled over the fact that I would have privacy and wouldn't have to deal with anyone else on the property that I didn't ask why. The only thought that came to mind was that there would be no complaints if I failed to scoop the poop on occasion. If I had company, there would be no nosy neighbor minding my business. I could play my music as loud as I wished. If Sora barked, there would be no complaints. It represented freedom, privacy, and a sense of pride in that I had found such a great place that was so affordable in a great location. Finding the place helped to somewhat ease the pain of the breakup and gave me a sense of independence. It was the first time in my life that I would live alone, without another human, that is. I loved Sora, and she enjoyed the fact that I started to let her jump up into my bed and sleep next to me at night. And she loved the walks in the nearby park because I was so close to downtown and on a somewhat busy street. There was a fair amount of foot traffic. Not a lot of foot traffic at night, but enough so that the sound of people conversing as they walked by never struck me as odd. I simply accepted it as part of living close to downtown. I kept my curtains closed all the time because I was close enough to the sidewalk that nosy passersby could see inside my house. A couple of weeks after I'd moved in, it occurred to me that every night, at around 11 p.m., I would hear what seemed to be the same voices engaged in the same undiscernible conversation. After about a week, my curiosity demanded that I see who these creatures of habit were, and at 11 p.m., I positioned myself by the front door. Like clockwork, at 11 p.m. on the dot, the same voices having the same muffled conversation could be heard, starting at one end of the sidewalk in front of my duplex, walking towards downtown. When I heard them talking, I started to open my front door. But as soon as I started to turn the doorknob, the conversation abruptly stopped. I opened the door and stepped out onto the front porch. For the first time in my life, I was genuinely terrified. It just didn't make sense. There were no people at all. Not on the sidewalk, not on the street. It was just silent. I didn't even hear the cars driving the busy stretch of East Colonial Drive just a few blocks away. That was the night that things started to happen. It started with my precious dog. The sight of Sora retreating to the corner of the living room, farthest from the front door. Her whole body was trembling, is burnt into my memory. I had to pick her up and carry her to the bedroom that night. That was also the night that the 11 p.m. voices stopped. But that's also the night when the really frightening things started up. What happened next convinced me that I was having genuine paranormal experiences. I decided to start keeping a journal of my experiences, as they started happening at all hours of the day and night. This is the order that the first occurrences happened. Saturday morning, November 10, 2012. Between 10:05 and 10 a.m. Vacuuming my living room rug, the vacuum cleaner cut off. Then I heard the voice of an elderly-sounding man, as if only a couple of feet away from me, say, "What are you doing?" Then the vacuum cut back on. I ran out of the house, calling Sora to follow me. I wouldn't go back into the house until my NA sponsor came over 3 hours later. Tuesday morning, November 13, 2012, approximately 1:20 a.m. Awakened by the sound of something crashing onto the floor in the kitchen. It sounded like a stack of plates. I got up to investigate the cause and found that every light in the house was on, except for my bedroom light. Wednesday morning, November 14, 2012, approximately 1:30 a.m. I had recorded myself turning off all the lights throughout the house before going to bed. I was awakened again by what sounded like a stack of plates crashing to the floor. The lights in the living room and kitchen were on. I got up and turned them off. As I climbed into bed, both the kitchen and living room lights came on again. I continued to document the strange occurrences, but would just write down the dates, times, then say same as last night. Unless there was a change, like the night that the lights in the living room turned on and off for about 10 minutes. B. Why this time? I had gotten over my trepidation of sharing these experiences with the people I knew. I started to tell close friends about what I was experiencing, and much to my relief, the overwhelming response was loving and supportive. A friend of mine from my recovery program suggested that I have the duplex blessed and introduced me to an ordained minister from a nearby Unitarian church. I gratefully accepted my friend's offer to appeal to the minister to perform the blessing. And on Saturday, December 9, 2012, 2 ministers and 3 of my friends from the program came over and prayed and performed a blessing, then a sort of spiritual cleansing with sage. The ritual and prayers seemed to work. All unusual activities stopped. I had a great Christmas in my new digs and felt a tremendous sense of relief. Sora seemed to be returning to her normal, playful self. It really seemed that everything was going to be all right until the night of January 10, 2013. I have gone over it again and again, trying to figure out what it was that caused the whole experience to start again. It was as if I was watching a movie again, complete with the 11 p.m. phantom pedestrians. That night, starting at 1115 p.m., I called everyone who had been part of the blessing and cleansing. They all, in turn, agreed to come back the next weekend. The next day, I called the property management company and spoke to Mike, property manager, and the person that had done the lease signing with me. I asked him how long the unit I had rented had been vacant before I moved in. Why wasn't the other unit being leased, and if previous tenants had ever said anything about strange things happening in the unit. He only answered my first question before saying he had an important call and would get back to me. It was around this date that I started to get sick. Not like a cold or stomachache sick, but seriously, painfully ill. I developed, almost overnight, ulcerative colitis. Even though I didn't have Crohn's disease, it was debilitating. It affected every aspect of my life. Then the infections came. This went on for weeks and caused me to have to take an extended medical leave of absence because I was put on IV antibiotics. I was never one to get sick. I worked out daily, ate healthy, got plenty of rest, at least prior to moving into this duplex. Overall, I was a very active, very healthy person, especially since I had started my journey in recovery. My doctor was perplexed as to why my health had taken so drastic a turn. Then it happened. I was physically attacked. It was January 28th. I was pushed while stepping out of the tub. I fell to the floor. I've never been so scared. I started praying the Lord's Prayer and the 23 Ard Psalms intermittently, over and over. Balled up in a fetal position, I was terrified and had reached my breaking point. Almost as if on cue, my dear friend Rico called me. I got to my cell phone. I was crying. The only thing I heard from Rico was, "Here's the deal. I'm coming to see you right now, and if you have plans, cancel them. This is urgent. I'll be there in 2 hours. I'll explain when I get there. And are you okay, by the way?" Rico lived in Tampa. I hadn't seen or spoken to him since the weekend that I moved into the duplex. Rico was the type who visited his psychic every week. He would frequently include comments like, "Well, Laura." His psychic said, "I must do this," or "Laura told me not to do insert activity here," or "Oh my God, she said his would happen." I adored Rico. I think that, had I not been in a relationship when I first met him, I definitely would have pursued him. Whenever we were around each other, it was an amazing time. I dressed quickly and grabbed Sola's leash. I drove to a nearby dog park and waited for Rico to call. I was not going back into that house alone. Rico called 2 hours later to tell me he'd arrived. He used my hidden spare key to get into my unit. When I got back to the house, I walked in through the back door and called to Rico, who responded, "DONOTCLOSATHEB-CKDOOR." The smell of sage filled my whole house. I walked into the hallway, and there was Rico and some woman that I had never seen before. Rico was waving his hands over a smoking roll of sage. He walked up to me, staring me in the eyes. "Paul, this is Laura." Laura walked over and threw her arms around me, then leaned down and, looking at Sora, said, "Why, yes, girl." Rico went on to tell me that when he arrived at Laura's house that morning, the only thing she said was for him to go to his friend Paul, and that she was coming along. She told Rico that Paul was in danger, and they had to sage Paul's house. Not just once, but a few times, and to get a priest to bless the house. Rico then told me, "Paul, I've never spoken your name to her before. She always asks that I never give names so that her visions can be validated." When she said your name, I was already walking towards the door. What you are going through isn't a haunting, Paul. There is an evil here that will not stop inflicting harm until it's banished or destroyed. This is going to take so much more than I can do, Laura explained. Then, just as she finished speaking, I started feeling extremely nauseated. Sora ran out the back door to the far end of the backyard and started trembling. Then right in front of me, Rico and Laura, in broad daylight, two of the kitchen cabinets opened and the contents started falling out of the cabinets. The three of us left the house and ran into the backyard. I started feeling more nauseated and I was shaking. I don't recall passing out. I only recall waking up in the hospital. My mom was sitting in a chair beside me. As my head cleared, Mom explained that Rico had called her. I had been unconscious for 3 days. She had already visited me twice and had even picked up Sora and taken her home to Mom's house. Once Mom was sure that I was coherent, she took my hand and told me that I am never to go back to that house. The next morning, I was discharged from the hospital. Mom picked me up. I really wasn't paying attention to where we were until we turned onto the street where the duplex was. I started to speak, but then as we pulled up to the duplex, I saw my two brothers and their pickup trucks, several people from my program, and a U-Haul. I am not exaggerating when I say that it took less than 30 minutes for everything that I had in that house to be removed and loaded onto one of the trucks. We caravanned to the house I owned with my former partner, who was waiting at the house when we all pulled up. He had picked up my Jeep and parked it in the garage. Tim, my ex, met me at the car door. As I stepped out of the car, he hugged me. This doesn't mean we are getting back together, but I do love you, and you gave everybody a real scare. This is where you belong. For now, I laughed, thinking to myself, you have no idea what a real scare is. Within a week, my health had started to return. The ulcerative colitis was gone, so were the infections. I forgot to mention that Sola had started losing her fur. Within 3 weeks, her fur had grown back, and she was vibrant and healthy. I called the property management company and advised them that I had vacated the duplex and I demanded Matt's deposit back. I advised them that I had enough witnesses to attest to everything that happened to me. I was able to get the name and contact information of the people who had leased the unit before me, and they shared their experience with me. They had experienced the exact same things as I had. They had also done a bit of research. The property had a dark past that spanned decades. 3 suicides, a home invasion that resulted in 2 murders in the unit that wasn't rented. I was able to find a newspaper article about the home invasion. The property management company mailed my deposit and refunded me for 2 months' rent. What they did in not disclosing the property's past was unethical, and now, in most states, it's illegal. The duplex was razed in 2019,